We're from the city of Minnetonka, and we're here to talk about our hydrant flushing inspections kind of new system that we've put together. So our goal behind all of this was to create new applications to replace our old hydrant inspection workflows. Previously, we used a combination of CityWorks, this beautiful giant binder, of which we had 10 or 11 copies of it that we had to reproduce every year. If Yeah, you can't see what we're showing right now online, but is this big map book here by the pencil. And also crystal reports to kind of track progress along with the CityWorks dashboards. Keeping track of our inspections isn't straightforward. There's a lot of assets there. We have around 1,100 hydrants that we flush and do a full inspection of every year, and another 20, no, in total, 2,900 hydrants that we do full inspections of. Today, we're just talking about the flushing part of it, but it's a similar workflow. This is all part of our asset management transition, moving away from CityWorks into our enterprise GIS as our asset management system. And it's not us, it's them. We just don't want CityWorks anymore. And we also don't feel like diving into a whole nother asset management system when we know GIS so well. We are hoping to get gains. Well, we already have gains from this with making the application kind of self-maintaining. It just resets automatically every year and doesn't need us to create work orders or do any reactive work within CityWorks. And with this, we're getting real-time reactive maintenance workflows built in as well. At the very least, we wanted to maintain the capabilities that we had in CityWorks, and our goal was ultimately to try and enhance those and make them even better. So I'm going to pass it over to Ira because he actually built all of this, and I just watched over his shoulder. And yeah, he'll talk more.
All right, so we have our application for our entire Hydra program. I kind of want to split it into two parts. So we have our field application and our operation monitoring side. The field application is just field maps, your typical, how do we keep track of which hydrants are done? They change color, that kind of stuff. And they go through and we have dynamic forms that they go through and they do the whole inspection top to bottom, and that's that. For the operation monitoring part, that's kind of the more difficult part. How do we replicate the dashboards that were in CityWorks before? All of this sort of different monitoring capabilities that it had, but be able to replicate it in ArcGIS Online. Kind of a basic overview. We have flushing and maintenance hydrants. The flushing hydrants have to be flushed in a very specific order. The intent was to move water in a very specific way through the system to break the least water mains every year when we do flushing. We have the split into 3 zones. So you'll see that on the right-hand side, it says there's like 1, 0, 1. On the left-hand side, they start with 2, and at the bottom, they start with 3. We have flushing split into 3 different weeks. It's technically 4 weeks with just a gap week somewhere in there in case we need extra time. The entire city is flushed in that kind of order. Sometimes we mix it up depending on construction projects, that kind of stuff. But for our flushing hydrant inspections, those are the 1,100 or so hydrants. For our maintenance hydrant inspections, those ones aren't really flushed. They just kind of open them for a little bit, make sure that they work, do spot checks on them, and then say whether or not they need additional repairs on top of that. For our database layers, just kind of want to go over how we have everything set up. So before we started this whole process, we had 2 main layers. We have our hydrant feature class. Those actually have all of the hydrants in them. That contains the flushing zone information and the sequence that those hydrants are flushed in. And then the flushing zones feature class is all of these zones that you see here on the right. They really were just a visual identifier with a little bit of notes on top of them. That was pretty much their whole purpose. What we added new this year was the hydrant activity table. So that keeps track of all of the water or the inspections and flushing, inspections and repairs. So every single thing that we were keeping track of in CityWorks, we now want to track directly in GIS. So this is a brand new table. They're all related to each other with just a global ID kind of standard. For our experience builder, we landed on experience builder because we needed it to be editable. Our utility supervisor needs to be able to assign work, kind of like we did in CityWorks. So it's kind of a no-brainer for us to go with Experience Builder. For the, we also want to be able to provide basic statistics on efficiency. So who's assigned to what zone, how many hydrants are done, by who in every zone, in case the operator needs help for maybe their zone, or it's taking longer than normal for the water to turn clear, that kind of stuff. We can send extra people to help flush, get things done a little faster. But for being able to show progress by zone, have we started the zone yet? Like have we flushed anything yet? Is there any hydrants that are being flushed in that zone? And is the zone completed? We didn't have that information in CityWorks. We didn't have that information kind of anywhere really. What happened was that we had one online map that when an operator finished all the inspection of the zones, they just call our utility supervisor and say it's done. And then he would update the map. Not very good, not very automated. So we wanted to automate that and have a nice little thing that you can see here on the right that changes colors when it's done. It's great. So we use view tables. I don't know how many of you are familiar with view tables, but we didn't need geometry, so we just went straight with tables just to get the data we needed. We tracked the flushing zone progress using both the total hydrants and inspected hydrants. So this view table only has 4 fields. The benefit of using view tables is we don't have to create any new feature classes, don't need to do any extra tracking. It's just create a new table that pulls data from a bunch of other tables, agglomerates it, and spits it back out someplace else. In this case, we're taking all of our hydrants and we're grouping them by their flushing zone, and then saying this is how many hydrants are in that zone, and this is how many hydrants have been inspected based on those related tables. Saying if it has a inspection that was completed within the last year, or flushing inspection that was completed in the last year, count it. And so this year you see that we have in the picture on the right where it says total hydrants and inspected hydrants. The total hydrants and inspected hydrants match because the screenshot was taken at the end of the year, or they've all been flushed. So now we get into the meaty, juicy SQL part of it. If you're not familiar with SQL, I apologize, but this essentially what it does is it creates a view table in our database. This is through SQL Server Management Studio, not through like anything ArcGIS related. What essentially it's doing here is creating an object ID field. It's creating the total number of hydrants and total number of inspected hydrants. And then it's also creating the flushing zone field. So that's what's grouping everything by. The first select statement that we have here is it's just counting all the total hydrants. This one.
Oh,
unfortunately, we can't really click, but
like line 9 or 10 or
something. So the first thing we do is we declare all the fields we need. Second thing we do is we say, so here's all the fields we need. Here's a subquery where we ask it to count all of the total hydrants that are flushing. Then we look at, or all the total hydrants that are flushing in that zone. And then we join that to another table that does almost the same thing, but it only selects the flushing hydrants that have a completed flushing inspection. When we publish this view table, there's a couple things to note. When you register the view with the geodatabase, which you have to do to be able to see this on ArcGIS Online before you can publish it, so ArcGIS Server can actually see the table we just made in SQL Server Management Studio, we first need to have object IDs. And the reason why this is typically when you make a table in ArcGIS Pro or ArcMap, what have you, it will automatically keep track of this object ID field for you. But when you create a view table, it doesn't really know what that means. Because if you do like a group by clause and you say, yeah, order by all the flushing IDs, what does it do with the object ID field? It has 7 hydrants in that zone. There's 7 object IDs. It doesn't really know what that means. So you have to define it programmatically. For me, we just used something that's unique to Transact SQL called row number. So we just sorted it by ascending and said, hey, for the first zone that shows up, that's 1-01, assign it the number 1 and just go down from there. It's great. For the register with the geodatabase tool, it's pretty straightforward. You just pretty much tell it the object ID field, throw the table in there, click register, and it works. One thing to note is that when you register the table with the geodatabase, do not ever delete it in SQL Server Management Studio or any other database, because it will forget, or it won't run the rest of the processes to unregister with the ArcGIS server. And so if you were to delete that table and then recreate a new one with the same table name, it will fail. Yeah. It's not very good. Well, because SQL Server Management Studio is, it does exactly what you tell it to do, which is the problem. It does exactly what you tell it to do. It tells you to delete the table, but you didn't tell it to delete anything else. Whereas if you delete it from ArcGIS Pro or our catalog, it will run through all the processes to actually remove it from everywhere in ArcGIS Server, all the references, so that you can delete it and then re-add it. So just a little side note, I came across this issue 3 times. There are now 3 things in my database that I cannot rename. They're stuck there forever. Once you're done with that, you just publish the view table and you're able to see it on ArcGIS Online. We decided that when creating this dashboard, or when creating this experience builder didn't have exactly all the tools we wanted. We wanted the color on the background to be able to change whenever it says it's in progress or completed or not started. You can kind of do that in Experience Builder through attachments, but it's not a really great solution. So we wanted to take advantage of the advanced formatting capabilities in ArcGIS dashboards. So we just embedded one of these lists directly into it. The dashboard is literally just this list, nothing else on it. It's great. So the colors change based on the zone progress using Arcade that you can see in that top area for the advanced formatting. And then it also calculates the percentage right there on the spot. So we have zone name, say it's in progress, complete or not started. And then on the right-hand side, you can say that's percentage, expected, and then it tells you how many hydrants are actually done versus how many are left. We also have the creative use of text formatting. So at the bottom there, all I did was left align the actual name and then right align on the second row down all of the percentages. So now, no matter what device you're using it on, it scales, which is pretty cool. ArcGIS, for the experience builder, when you tried to set scaling on there, I don't know how many of you have tried that on different devices. It's really bad. The automatic scaling is not great. And then you do iPads or phones, you have to do everything manually. It's really not fun.
Yeah, we tend to get the nicer monitors city, and then no one else has as good resolution as we have. And then so our dashboards look like bad words.
They oftentimes look too large when we do them because everybody else's screens are a little smaller. So here's an example. You have pulled up?
Yeah. Oh, it's not going to share because we're sharing.
Okay, never mind that. Well, so yeah, here's the screenshot from the last slide, but bigger. So as they go through this, the way the utility supervisor uses this dashboard is they click any one of those zones, they mark it saying that zone is now in progress. It's assigned to an operator. And then that list on the right will change color based on if those hydrants are being completed or not. So is there a hydrant in there that's been inspected? No, it'll say not started. If it is being inspected, if there's at least one hydrant that's been inspected, it turns yellow. And if all hydrants have been inspected, it turns red. That's really all this does. This is a lot of work just to have this one little tiny thing, but I love it.
And at the top here, you can see we're only talking about flushing right now, but we replicated this with our maintenance hydrants. So there's a separate tab where you can see the hydrants that get inspected. And then there's a repair tab as well. All of it seamlessly goes into that. Sign repairs out instantly. Out of service hydrants for too long.
Okay, so our field crews and utility supervisor absolutely love this solution. Before they were mismatched, or they were sitting there, mismatching between here's an iPad with CityWorks pulled up that has all the work orders, and then here's a book that you have to do to figure out which order to do the work orders in. And so it's a lot easier now to just open field maps, and the only thing that the field crew cares about is the hydrant, finding the lowest numbered hydrant, clicking on it, saying it's green, and then the utility supervisor sees that immediately. instead of this weird thing where if we wanted to find the progress, we'd have to run a crystal report, which is not very cool, or do some weird, funny query things in CityWorks, which was also not cool. We extended this view function or view table functionality to include all other hydrants. So that was also the major maintenance hydrants. And you can actually see that in the SQL code. If you go back, it looks at both flushing and inspection hydrants. We also use a similar method to make a query layer, which is similar to the view table, but defined within ArcGIS Pro rather than SQL Server Management Studio. And we use that to show the results of the hydrant inspections on a repair dashboard. It's actually in that same experience builder. It's that furthest right tab for repairs. We like move this. Yeah, it's this right here, this repairs tab. And that's just a dashboard. It's just a tab that shows a dashboard, which I feel like a lot of us have done at some point. The main benefit to that, though, is that when there's an out of service hydrant, before we had to do a bunch of queries in CityWorks to figure out, once all the flushing was done, we'd go in, click a bunch of buttons and say, yep, here's all the out of service hydrants. But that was something we had to manually check for. Whereas now they immediately show up as red on the map. So we can immediately see there's an out of service hydrant. Crew can be sent out almost immediately, or at least the same week, to go fix that hydrant. And here's a couple of resources in case you ever want to try to do this yourself. These are extremely helpful, including that first link for registering tables with the geodatabase. I had to sit there for a little bit to figure that one out.